Ari Lewis Show.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Ari Lewis Show here on Israel Sports News Radio. Thank you for joining us. At any time, you can email the program arilewishow@hotmail.com, or you can email the station israelsportsnewsradio@gmail.com. Of course, the NBA Finals is upon us in the United States, but there's also the Israeli basketball finals upon us here in the Holy Land. On the line to discuss that and the road the two teams took to get here is the Sports Rabbi, Josh Halickman. Back to the program. Sports Rabbi, how you doing out there?
How you doing there, Ari? What's going on?
I'm doing great, and, it's a very interesting situation that for the second year in a row, Maccabi Tel Aviv is not in the finals. First time in 50 years that's happened. You are obviously an expert on the Israeli basketball scene. Is this the worst season in Maccabi Tel Aviv's history?
This is, at least in my lifetime, it's definitely the worst season in Maccabi Tel Aviv's history. Ari, they just named a new coach today, so hopefully that will move things along onto a brighter path. But listen, they've been having major trouble the last 2 years, ever since David Blatt left after they won the European Championship and, of course, the League Championship, the State Cup. It has not been the same. They've gone through a number of coaches. Guy Goodis, he started this year. He was fired, replaced by Jean Tabak, and that just didn't work out well at all. The roster of players has been an absolute disaster. Has been awful. They've brought in and out players like they were taking tissues out of a tissue box. They brought in guys that were injured. They brought in guys that got injured right away. They got guys that had attitude problems. They were sent home. It's a mess there, but the real mess really belongs, unfortunately, to the management side of things. They just didn't handle building the squad properly over last summer, Ari.
It's funny to think that it was really only 2 years ago. It was not a long time ago, as you mentioned, Maccabi wins the European Championship. Don't they know, or shouldn't they have known, that David Blatt was going to leave at some point? Maybe they didn't prepare properly enough for his departure, because, as you mentioned, that seemed to be the real domino that set this whole disaster up.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not David Blatt. It's also the fact they have to build a squad. Remember, in Europe, the players don't last with teams very long. They're in and out every year or so. So there was a big turnover the season right after David Blatt. Ricky Halickman left, Tyrese Rice left. Those were two major scorers for the team and two major contributors. David Blue, our good friend David Blue, he left as well. Another massive contributor. When you bring in other players to try to replace them, it's never easy. But you look at this year, it's been a tragedy of errors, one after the other. They did win the State Cup, which in itself was a miracle. They were lucky. They were one-off games. They ended up playing Ashdod in the final, and they defeated them. The semifinals, they looked terrible. It was an awful game. I got to see that live this week. They played Maccabi Rishon LeZion, who is a good team led by Mark Lyons, Sean Dawson. Some good young players, Daryl Monroe, good big center down low. Both teams were absolutely horrific. It was an awful game to watch. We were sitting in the press box just saying how thankfully it was a one-game semifinal, because I don't think we could have sat through a series. It was just an absolute tragedy of errors, one after the next. And it just was poor basketball. It seems that the players never gelled. Jean Tabak, the coach, never really was able to get what he needed out of his players. Making mistakes, turnovers, bad passes, foolish shots. At the end of the day, Jean Tabak paid the price. There are a bunch of players that are going to be shown the door, and they're going to bring in a whole new set of players. Erez Edelstein, the coach of the Israel national team, he was named coach today, so looking forward that he will be able to do some good things with Maccabi Tel Aviv basketball club, hopefully going forward into next season.
So let's say hypothetically you were in Erez's ear. What would you tell him to do? What does he need to do to change this thing around?
He's got to be a professional. He's got to make sure he gets players. He has to have input in the players that are brought in. There's no real general manager with the team. There are managers. There are people that take care of certain things. But last season, apparently the people that brought in the players weren't exactly the people that should have been bringing in the players. It was a whole big mess. It was a balagan, as they say. as to who was actually building the team. Erez Edelstein should be involved in this. They've already apparently signed 4 players, which means he wasn't involved in bringing them in. Some of them, especially Sonny Weems, who you may be familiar with, he played in the NBA. He is definitely a good signing. The other 3 players, we really don't know much about them. Mostly played in Europe. We'll have to see. Hopefully he will also make a few further changes and go forward. There just seemed to be a lack of effort. There was no killer instinct on the team. They just didn't seem to care. And, at some point you lose the players, the coach is lost, and everything else falls in the domino. It's a domino effect, all right.
Yeah, and regarding the idea of the coach being involved with player selection, of course, Bill Parcells famously said they expect you to cook the food. They should let you buy the groceries. So hopefully they'll get Erez more involved with the selection of players. Again, we're being joined by the Sports Rabbi, Josh Halickman, here on the Ari Lewis Show, talking about Israeli basketball. It's interesting, Sports Rabbi, you spend the first 6 minutes or so talking about Maccabi Tel-Aviv. They're not in the finals, but that's the way it goes here in Israel. The 2 teams that made it, Hapoel Yerushalayim, not so much of a surprise, obviously. They're the defending champions. Rishon LeZion, how shocked were you, or are you, that they are in the finals?
I'm not surprised. I mean, they had a rough time in the quarterfinals. They really made it by Maccabi Haifa by the hair of their chinny chin chin. They had been up 2-0, then it was tied 2-2, and they had to go up to Haifa for the 5th and deciding game, and they won that game. Rishon's played good basketball. They were the best team in Europe this year of any Israeli team. They were playing in the Europe Cup, and they made it all the way to the finals. They had a phenomenal season. Interestingly enough, they've had 2 coaches, Ari. Sharon Drucker, who really fell out with ownership, just about 2 months ago was replaced by Arik Shivik. And you may remember Arik Shivik. He was the coach of the Israel national team a bunch of years ago. He had been coaching down in Hapoel Eilat. He's a good professional coach. The truth is that the Sports Rabbi really liked Arik Shivik. I would have really liked to have seen him at Maccabi Tel Aviv, but Rishon LeZion gobbled him up. And what did he do? He went out for the 2nd year in a row and beat Maccabi Tel Aviv in the semifinal series. He did it last year with Hapoel Eilat, and this year he does it with Rishon LeZion. So some coaches have some teams' numbers.
Okay, very interesting. I guess it's a chemistry issue more or less, right? Because you talked about players jump around from team to team. So is it just some just gel better with some coaches than others?
Yeah, that's definite. I mean, that's a huge factor in any type of team. If you want to even take a look at David Blatt, why he was let go from the Cleveland Cavaliers, even with the record that they had and the fact they went to the finals last year, he just didn't gel with the players. I mean, listen, obviously LeBron has a lot to say. He's an important person in that team, if not the most important person in the city.
Right.
And if you're not going to gel with LeBron James, you're in bad shape. And I actually heard an interview with Dave McMenamin, who is the ESPN Cleveland beat reporter. I actually heard it this week. And he talked about where Blatt failed, and he said he just never gelled with not only the players, he never gelled with the media. He was never able to really be able to talk to the media. They found it to be condescending. I don't know if that, probably wasn't on purpose. It just might be his personality, but he was never able to really match it up with the American media, who sometimes need to have a little bit of a laugh. You know how it is.
Yeah. And that is a big part of sports in any city, getting along with the media. They can certainly paint you a certain way, and obviously got to get along with the star player, LeBron James. And LeBron didn't have a lot of respect for him. That's a nice way of putting it. Again, we're here on the Ari Lewis Show, joined by the Sports Rabbi Josh Halickman, talking about the finals. So Hapoel Yerushalayim makes it back there as we talk about defending champions. Any particular difference, per se, this season than last season? Maybe a different player stepping up. What was your take of this season as opposed to last?
With Hapoel Jerusalem, I think that they had a very similar season, actually. I mean, Europe, they failed. They did not have a good year in Europe. They had some really down moments during the course of the year. They had that last year also. They had a really big streak of wins near the end of the season. They peaked, and they had that last year also. Playoffs have been rough on them this year. They had a rough time against Hapoel Tel Aviv. a series that went 5 games. First game, they played Nate Robinson with 46 points. They were lucky, Hapoel Jerusalem. They escaped in overtime. I mean, really escaped. They should have probably lost that game. Game 2, they lose in Tel Aviv. Game 3, they blow out Tel Aviv. Games 2 and 3 were total blowouts. Game 4 back in Tel Aviv was an absolute barn burner. An amazing, amazing game. I know Nate Robinson played injured. It was an excellent, excellent game, and it was a game that Hapoel Tel Aviv needed to win, and they did. They made sure to stay ahead of Jerusalem all game long. The last game, Game 5, Hapoel Tel Aviv is winning the whole way through. Again, Jerusalem struggling. Somehow, right at the end, Hapoel Jerusalem just was able to pull out that victory. Ari won by 2 points, 86-84. There was a lot of relief. Nate Robinson put on a show. I think the biggest problem they had in that series is that the Israelis didn't produce. Yotam Halpern and Lior Eliyahu are nowhere to be found, especially the last few games, and they relied. Dante Smith basically said, you know what, I'm taking this all on myself. I scored 30-plus points, and I ripped down all kinds of rebounds, and I'm going to take this team into the semifinals, which he did. They get to the semifinals, Ari, and they play a very, very upstart Hapoel Eilat team, coached by Oded Katash, one of their former coaches and one of the great Israeli players of all time. And again, they're in a dogfight all the way to the end. They were losing by 4 points with about 1 minute and 40 seconds left, and they just pulled out the game yet again. They pulled out the rabbit out of their hat, the proverbial one. And luckily for them, they were able to just make it through. What big problems did they have that game? Shooting wasn't great. Eilat had tons more shots, but they missed. It was a really, really close game. The matchups were good. And, Hapoel Jerusalem's going to play this evening for the title against Maccabi Rishon LeZion. It should be a great match. I'm not sure who's going to win. I believe that Jerusalem will take it because they are the better team. They have the better individual player. But, in these one-game, shootouts, you never know who's going to win.
And before we get your final prediction, I want to talk about Nate Robinson, 3-time slam dunk champion and 31 years old, and kind of an interesting time to come to Israel because a lot of players of Nate's caliber come, almost 40, late 30s type of thing. So I want to know if you had any insight why you thought he came to Israel as opposed to other places, and was he just kind of done in the NBA? Give us your thoughts on that.
It was great for Israeli basketball. He was fabulous, a lot of fun. Didn't talk to the media much. Had a little bit of an attitude, which we always know that from Nate. At the end of the day, though, he came here to play ball. He played ball. Almost took his team into the semifinals. Gotta give him credit. Almost knocked out.
Yeah, pretty much almost all by himself. And that hilarious interview where he was in the park, and that gentleman came up to him and challenged him one-on-one, kind of a B player. That was a pretty funny scene in and of itself. That was almost worth him coming to Israel just for that scene, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, he loved that. He loved that. He liked to be the man of the hour, and good for him. At least he came here and he played and he put on a good show. We've had other players come here from the States and NBA and just were disasters. He at least, he loved the fans. The fans loved him. It was a great match. Good for basketball here in Israel, and wish him luck. He says he's going to try for the NFL now. Good luck to him.
All right. Indeed. Again, we're joined by the Sports Rabbi Josh Halickman here on the Ari Lewis Show on Israel Sports News Radio. Okay, Sports Rabbi, I know the title game's tonight. I know it's a tough game to call, but that is our business. Let's hear your prediction.
What can I tell you? I think Jerusalem's going to win this game. I think they're going to win it by about 6 points, somewhere along the lines of 81-75. That's my prediction. I think it will be fairly distanced most of the game, meaning that there's going to be a 10-point lead throughout. It might get cut to 3 or 4. I think you'll see Rishon make a couple of runs. I think it will be close-ish, but at the end of the day, Hapoel Jerusalem's the better team. They have the better individual player, and I think they're going to win the game. We'll say 81-75.
All right. Well, you're usually right on the money with your predictions, so we'll keep an eye on it. And before I let you go, everyone, if you want to find out about Israel basketball, and I'm not just saying this because Sports Rabbi's on here, his website is better than the Israeli Basketball League. And I'm not. It's true. I was prepared for the interview, and I went to their site, and I don't understand what's going on here. But the Sports Rabbi has everything down, articles written by himself that explain what is going on and how the teams got to the finals and all the good stuff. So kol kavod to you on all your great work, and enjoy the game. It'll be a lot of fun no matter who takes it. And we have you down 6-point victory for Hapoel Yerushalayim. So enjoy the game.